Welcome to The Intentional Exit, a leadership legacy podcast for those who don't just want to retire, but want to do it well. I'm Rebecca Schreiber, and this is where we help you protect what you've built, reduce unnecessary taxes, and create a plan that gives you clarity, confidence, and control. So together, we make sure your exit is not accidental, it's intentional. Before we begin, please note that the information shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be interpreted as tax, legal, or financial advice. For guidance specific to your situation, we recommend consulting with a qualified professional.
When you buy a house or you buy a car, you also buy insurance. And the reason we do that is because we want to protect our greatest assets. So the things that maybe cost us a lot of money, that value that they have inside of our lives, we want to make sure we have a place to live. We want to make sure that we have a way to get to and from things like work, school, the grocery store. And so it's very surprising to me as we move into retirement that a lot of people take insurance and throw it out the window. They simply decide that insurance has zero place in retirement. On episode 19, we're going to explore why maybe you should be thinking about insurance under a different light. I'm Rebecca Schreiber. This is The Intentional Exit. And again, today we're going to be talking about this thing called insurance and why it has a place. So typically when people think about insurance, they think about those premiums that they're paying each and every month. And if they never use the actual insurance, it can often feel like a giant waste of money. I've been paying this insurance company for years. They aren't giving me anything. All I'm doing is paying, and they're making money and I'm making none. Well, while that may or may not be true, it's one of those things that on the day that something happens, you're never going to look up and go, man, am I so sorry that we paid for that insurance. No, as a matter of fact, you are going to look at the insurance that you've spent years paying for and go, boy, am I glad that I purchased the insurance. And then when we're talking about retirement or we're talking about our intentional exit, the first thing that pops into people's mind is life insurance. So life insurance as a death benefit. There are other things that life insurance can do for you, and I want to walk through those today, but life insurance is a death benefit. I've also never heard when someone passed away, someone say, oh, I hope they didn't have life insurance. You know what? I hope they never spent money on that. No, what they say is, do you think he had life insurance? Do you think she did? Do you think they took care of their family? Oh, are they going to put up a GoFundMe? What's that going to look like? And while that is one basic form of life insurance, there are lots of things as we move into our intentional exit that insurance can actually create a benefit for those people who take advantage of it. So whenever we're moving towards the intentional exit and we're trying to create security around retirement, we're trying to make sure that we're going to be able to sustain that paycheck, right? That paycheck that comes to us each and every month or each and every year, or we're trying to preserve dollars that we've spent lots and lots of years growing and then lots and lots of years watching. The biggest thing that I hear people say as they're moving into retirement is not, boy, I hope I can grow this money as big as humanly possible. They're more concerned that the value of their dollars are going to shrink over time and that they're going to be able to hold on to it. And while there is no perfect product out there, whether you are in the banking side, which is more your stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs, if you're into real estate and you're using the income off of a property, or whether you're using insurance, everything has benefits and drawbacks. And a lot of times when people are thinking about insurance from this standpoint, they think about it in or two ways, but there are actually multiple ways that insurance can benefit you in the long run. And the first thing is, whenever you're using some insurance products that are out there, they can actually help you to preserve the dollars that you've worked so hard to gain. Because if you're starting to pull money out of that bucket, we've talked about this before, if you're pulling money out of your bucket at the same time you've got a hole in the bottom, you're exponentially increasing the loss of the dollars inside of the bucket, right? So if you're trying to pull them out the top and they're leaking out the bottom because we've got inflation, we've got market fluctuation, we've got taxes, and those dollars are slowly being drained out of your account on the bottom side, or they're less effective, or they're shrinking inside of that bucket at the same time you're trying to pull them out, it's been proven that you could experience failure in retirement, meaning that you could run out of money or run out of the ability to be able to keep up. However, for a lot of our clients, that kind of balance between the different pillars of retirement, so that banking, the real estate portion or rental income, that kind of a thing, and then some insurance products that create some solidity or some guarantees, then we're able to kind of balance out whatever is happening inside of the world. Because the one thing that we know for sure is that life is going to change. And even though we've had this giant bull run, right? We've seen the market go nothing but really up. I mean, yes, we've had a couple bobbles over the last couple of years, but really, if you look at the beginning point starting back in 2009 to where we're at now in 2026, it's really been a pretty straight line up. And it's very easy to forget that the market can go down and kind of stay down. We saw that back in 2000 to 2003. And then again in 2008 with the housing crisis, we saw a big drop. And we know that for people who were heavily into the stock market or even in a balanced portfolio between 2000 and 2003, that if they never took out a dollar, it actually took them a full 10 years to get back to where they started out in the year 2000. And so if you are also at the same time taking dollars out of that portfolio to be able to live off of, it's very clear that your portfolio may not ever recover. But because we've had this big upswing, because we've had this big uptick, people are relying on these big returns year after year, and they are starting to really believe that the stock market will do nothing but go up. And this is a dangerous place to sit, because if you only believe that the positive will happen, you may find yourself over leveraging. You may find yourself getting riskier and riskier because you want the big reward. We all have what's called FOMO, right? Or fear of missing out. And we don't want to miss out on these big gains. And we're afraid that if we move into safety, that we may end up missing out. And while that might be true to a certain extent, what I would be more concerned over is what if you don't move to safety and all of a sudden the value of your account drops, you need money, and now you have no way to recover, which means that as we move into our later stages, we have the possibility of needing to go back to work. And what if our health doesn't warrant it? And so our clients that do the best, they balance between the different strategies. They balance between the safety that insurance companies can provide, or even the stable income. So some of our clients want that stable income. They want to know that, hey, in order to be able to create that need, we talked about in episode 17, we talked about the pillars, right? We talked about what are the pillars that you need to be able to create long-term success. And the very first pillar was static income. And you can do that either through things like Social Security or pension or even rental income, although that can vary, especially if you don't have somebody renting your property. But what if we could create yet a third avenue or even just a second avenue of that static income that would be guaranteed for life? What if we could artificially, or really just using some of the tools at our disposal, to be able to create another static income? And honestly, what if we could maybe layer it? So what if we could do one for whenever we get into retirement, and then we could do a secondary one that we wouldn't actually turn on until maybe year 8, year 9, year 10, right? And that extra layer of income would then come over the top of that other static income and help to deal with things like inflation. But people get nervous. What if I don't use it? Because you're thinking of it in the same capacity that you've been thinking about your homeowner's insurance, or you're thinking about it from the same standpoint of what you've been thinking about from your healthcare insurance or your car insurance, which is, if I don't use it, then they're wasted dollars. And that's simply not the case. Not if it's built the right way. If we build it the right way and we kind of layer things and stack them appropriately, and we're not talking about all of your money, we're talking about a portion of your money, using it to create the income that you need long term, and stacking it appropriately, we can do two things simultaneously. We can hedge against inflation. We can also create that static income for long-term success. We're going to know that, hey, we are preserving these dollars. So whether the market goes up or goes down doesn't matter. We're preserving dollars for our security. And maybe you don't like that concept. Maybe you don't want to create static income, but you want to hedge against inflation. And you are afraid that in the future, the market might not just go up, it might actually go down. And we know that that's very possible. In history, we've seen where the market can go down. How can I preserve my dollars? Well, we can use these life insurance products to be able to preserve those dollars for the long haul. And they may not get the full upswing of the market, but they do get incrementally better each and every year that we have a positive return inside of the market. And some of these even have a great fixed interest rate where they're getting 5%, 5.5% currently. Now, that does change throughout time. Certain years are better than others. I've seen it as much as 6.5%. I've seen it as low as 3%. And so, but you can kind of create this strategy that keeps up with inflation and doesn't necessarily see the downturn that we would see in the market, right? It creates a floor. So every time it goes up, it locks in, and it goes up and it locks in, and it goes up and it locks in, and then the market goes down and it holds steady, right? And wouldn't that make sense to have some of those dollars that you're planning on counting on, right? You're planning on needing those in the future. Wouldn't it make sense to preserve some of the growth? Because the only way that you can lock in the gain is if you actually do it. If you don't lock in the gain, then what you're going to find is that when the market goes down, so do you. But if we can preserve some of that gain and balance it, then we know that whenever we get 5 or 10 years down the road, if the market decides to fall down and go down for a little bit, we have a bucket that didn't lose its value along the way that we can pull dollars from. But it doesn't mean that every dollar should be in it. It doesn't mean that we should put everything into it. We need to have a good balance, and everybody's particular situation is a little different. How much money do you need? How worried are you about it? I don't get to make that decision. You do. We can talk about, how are we going to be able to build it? How are we going to be able to kind of hedge against this inflation? How are we going to have that paycheck replacement? And then, of course, there are other products inside of the life insurance that also create the death benefit. That was my other point, was when you use these products, if for some reason you put money into it, it's stable, it's growing, but you're not pulling money out of it, and then you pass away, the money doesn't disappear. Those dollars will end up going to your family exactly the way that you've saved them. Or if you've started to pull money out of those, that money will be there time and time again. And then if you haven't pulled all of the money out of it, right, and you actually have a guarantee that you'll be able to pull it out for your whole lifetime and your spouse's whole lifetime, depending on how it's set up. But if there's any money left over, then it goes to our beneficiaries. I don't see the problem. And we can talk about benefits and drawbacks. And of course, in everything you can possibly do, there's a benefit and a drawback, and we can work through those. We have to look at both sides. We have to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then from there, we have to decide what makes sense for me, right? That's the big key ingredient. There is no one perfect solution for every person, but there is such a thing as using different strategies to create the income replacement, to create hedging against inflation, to create security so that we don't have to worry about that market drop. And so I think that people who have pushed back from the table from insurance are really looking at it from the standpoint of, one, there were some policies back in the day that weren't good for the client. They were only really good for the insurance company. But that's why we have to talk about it from all angles. Also, whenever we're looking at this, if you're thinking about it from the standpoint of like car insurance or homeowners insurance, and you feel like you're going to pay and pay and pay and pay and pay, and if you don't use it, you're never going to get the benefit, well, but your kids will. Right? It's different in how it's actually structured. And you need somebody who understands how each thing is built so that you know that it's tailored to your particular situation. A lot of times the reason that people get a bad taste in their mouth is because they talk to somebody who was busy pushing a particular product instead of looking at the situation and then finding what solution matched that situation. And so because they were trained around one product or one particular, thing, this is what I know how to sell, this is what I'm going to sell everybody, and I'm just going to fit that square peg into a round hole, it's going to happen. You need somebody who goes, okay, well, that's a square hole, so we're going to use a square peg, and that's a round hole, so we're going to use a round peg, and that one's a triangle, and I haven't seen it before, but guess what? We've got a solution for that too, and this is the benefit, and this is the drawback, and these are all the things that you need to know before you walk into it, right? And so those are very clear things that we need to be able to walk through, that we need to be able to discuss so that you can make the best decision for you, and so that you can really look at, how does this benefit my life? How does this benefit my family? What are the things that it doesn't do so well? And what else can we use to offset maybe what it doesn't do quite as well? And then talk about all of them. Right? Because when we make really good decisions, it's because we've got really good information. And then also from the standpoint of how are we going to protect, we talked about this as well. It was pillar number 4, the one nobody wants to talk about. But how are we going to protect the dollars that are there to take care of our everyday expenses, our everyday needs, our healthcare expenses? That was pillar 3. How are we going to use what we have to protect those things in the event that we need long-term care? How are we going to protect the estate? How are we going to make sure that our kids end up with something? How are we going to make sure that we're able to take back control of that care? Because whenever you look at traditional long-term care insurance, it works very, very similarly to that car insurance or to that homeowner's insurance, which is why people have such a bad taste in their mouth. And it's warranted. People have a bad taste in their mouth because of how it has been handled in the past, which is, hey, you're going to pay this premium, you're going to pay it every month, you're going to pay it for your whole life, and then we're going to dangle the carrot and we're going to move it over here and we're going to move it over there, and then if you don't use it, you're going to lose it, right? And so people have a very bad taste because they feel like they've spent decades paying into something that never actually benefited their family because the best thing happened and they didn't actually ever need long-term care. But we know that 4 out of 5 people who reach the age of 60 at some point are going to need this very expensive care that can very quickly dismantle your retirement plan, can very quickly dismantle your estate plan, and everything that you've spent your whole life working for. And so I want to challenge you from the standpoint of, if we didn't waste dollars, if we put dollars into something that could hedge against a long-term care event and that could give your family more dollars and you more options to be able to stay in your home, to be able to have care come into your home, or maybe to go to a facility but not to wreck the static income for your spouse, or for the estate to be able to pass on to your kids. And we could just simply multiply dollars that you have for something that most of us are going to experience. And then if we didn't use them, those dollars would then go back to our spouse or back to our estate. Wouldn't that be a better idea? And so when we look at insurance and retirement, I want you to realize the 3 big key ingredients that it has to be able to take care of you. The first one is it can protect your dollars from a downturn. It can create stable income. And third, it can help to protect against one of the most expensive things that can happen in someone's lifetime, which is the need for long-term care. And if you start to look at it from that standpoint of, we're protecting against a downturn and inflation, we're protecting our paycheck when our dollars need to work for us because we're no longer working for our dollars, and it can protect against the long-term care need, which is a highly expensive need. And we can do all of those things without actually wasting money. I'd like you to just take 1 second to think about insurance under a different light, to really talk about the good, bad, and the ugly, and to see if maybe it has a place in your life. I'm Rebecca Shriver. Thank you so much for watching The Intentional Exit. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Share us with a friend. See if this is actually impactful for the people around you. Please remember that this is not to be used as legal, tax, or financial advice. Every person's particular situation deserves more than guesswork. It deserves intention. We'll see you next week on episode 20.